Oh, I'm really gonna need some help on this video today. Hey, Iseth, could you help me out there?
Don't wanna.
It's been over a month. I'll help you.
I said I don't wanna and so I ain't gonna.
Would you do it for a cookie? I got cookies. They're red velvet. I hear you like pretty much anything red.
Coming!
What's up, heathens? If you guys don't know, as you can already tell, I'm doing a video today with Iseth. So, if you guys don't know her, go down below, hit her link up.
The question is, if we meet an atheist or an agnostic or a person who at least wants to give the consideration to the fact that there is a higher principle, some supreme element, they may not say God, but I would accept that there has to be some profound element or higher principle.
I like how at the very start, you're already throwing the word fact, as if any of the nonsense you believe about your God has ever been proven. I also like how you equate higher principles with God, because last I checked, thermodynamics did not quite make it into the divine charts yet.
But that there's no evidence that that this person whose name is Muhammad is a prophet of God.
So now we went from there is something out there straight to there is a God. What if there are several gods? What if the higher principle has no thinking capabilities? What if it's a space turtle?
Would be cool if there was like a giant space turtle, right? We would need like giant leaves of lettuce, though.
So what miracle does the Quran has that seems to indicate that he was a prophet?
Okay, how exactly did you get from there is maybe perhaps somewhere somehow a God to are there miracles in the Quran? First of all, Atreyu clearly flew much more elegantly on Falcor than Muhammad on his winged pony. And secondly, neither of them have any evidence other than the book says so. In fact, probably the Infinite Story has more evidence because they had a film too. And you cannot depict Muhammad. Thirdly, you looked that up in a book that you just assumed to be correct without any evidence whatsoever that it actually is, and tried to find not evidence that we could use to test it, no, miracles. Miracles!
The answer would be the Quran itself. Other prophets were given a specific miracle to show the people. Allah gave to the Prophet ﷺ a composite scripture.
Okay, so while the other prophets at least do something fancy, which again you merely take for a fact without evidence, your prophet's fancy deed is, the drumroll, dictating a book with rules to someone. That's it? Seriously? That's kind of disappointing, you know? It's as if you said, of course Frodo Baggins is the messenger of the great Lord of Magic. There is a book that he wrote. Yeah, sure, there is Gandalf and Harry Potter who actually did magic, but hey, the book! Don't you see the miracle of the book? QED are magists.
And in that composite scripture, if a person takes the time to read, they will find 40 or 50 phenomena that the Quran speaks about that the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, could not himself have known.
Well,
Okay, let me nitpick here a bit. Assuming those phenomena you're talking about are actually correct in the book and you didn't just, interpret it into it later, or he didn't just have a guess or something, even if we assume that all of this is correct, and even if you say that he got it told to him by Dr. Sky Daddy someone, after he got it told to him, he knew it. He knew it himself. Unless you mean to imply that everything that we hear from someone somewhere can never be known by us. So, if, for example, your elementary teacher teaches you that 1 + 1 is 2, that's not really you knowing that 1 + 1 is 2. That's your elementary teacher's knowledge. But the elementary teacher has the knowledge from his elementary teacher. And so what happens is that knowledge is not really his knowledge. It's the elementary teacher's knowledge. And the elementary teachers of the elementary teacher's knowledge. You see where I'm getting at? The only way he would not know what he said that he knew was if at that point where he said it, he had some kind of shaky hallucinations where he would then wake up and no longer know what on earth he said. Like some sort of divine alcoholic.
Yeah, what she said.
I'll give you 2 or 3. The Quran says, وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا مُسْتَقَرٍ لَهَا. the sun and the moon each follow a law which they do not go outside of.
Oh, I know a lot about this.
Okay, that is such a painful statement. You don't give us any sources from where you have it. All you say is verse in the Quran. The Quran says. And so I went and looked up where in the Quran we have sun and moon. And I found 19 statements. And I had to look through them all to find out what you were actually talking about. So my guess is it's either Surah 39 verse 5 or it is Surah 55 verse 5. Surah 39 verse 5 goes like this. He created the heavens and the earth in truth. He wraps the night over the day and wraps the day over the night, and has subjected the sun and the moon, each running its course for a specified term. Unquestionably, he is the exalted in might, the perpetual forgiver. In which case, darkness wrapping over the light and the light over the darkness? Are you crazy? And the second one, Surah 55 verse 5, the sun and the moon move by precise calculations. That is so vague. And which law exactly are they not supposed to go outside of? Gravity? Thermodynamics? I bet they don't. After all, we wrote those laws because of how accurate they represent reality, including the sun and the moon. Hey, moon, it's Sunday. I don't really want to go up in Australia today. They always complain I'm so hot anyway. Wanna take over my shift?
I bet the moon would. The moon's a solid dude.
But you know what? I give you this. There is a very, very scientific claim in the Quran about the sun and the moon. Ladies and gentlemen, Surah 75, verse 9. And the sun and moon are joined together. Beautiful. Siamese twins.
Now, 1424 years ago, was that law known? Was it known 1424 years ago? Was it known? It didn't say, it says the moon and the sun. Now we now know that the moon goes around the earth, doesn't it, in its own orbit, isn't it? And we also know that the earth goes around the sun in its own orbit. Now the Quran says, وَالشَّمْسِ وَالْقَمَرِ, suggesting that the sun doesn't move out of its orbit. So that means the Quran is saying that the sun is in an orbit.
Well, no, it actually says, he wraps the night over the day, and he wraps the day over the night, and has subjected the sun and the moon, each running its course for a specified term. How exactly you wrap light is a bit of a riddle to me, except it isn't, it's gibberish. And the earth is pretty much absent from that verse, as if it is utterly irrelevant to your God. So irrelevant, in fact, that he considers the moon more important. But hey, it's your God, not mine. Not gonna judge his priorities. But the main point is, the verse is far from being accurate, and even more far from being a miracle.
There we go. Fuck.
Could the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, have known that the sun has its own orbit, its own law? He could not have known that. Could he have also known that the earth is positioned in such a way as to make it appear that the sun is stationary? No.
First of all, the sun is not stationary. You have just said it yourself. So that would be wrong. Secondly, in order to make something look stationary, you have to take a camera, make it rotate around itself, make it rotate around whatever you want to look stationary, and then whatever you want to look stationary, you have to rotate around something else while the camera rotates around that and while the camera rotates around itself. Do you see my problem with this?
Second thing, could the Prophet ﷺ have known that the moon is also in its own orbit around the earth as the earth is moving around the sun? Could he have known that? No, he couldn't have. The Quran said that.
Well, you either give me the surah or I assume you made it up, because I cannot find it. And I'm pretty sure something somewhere around there can be interpreted remotely that way, but that is already the problem, is it not? So, to your claim, the moon is pretty much a lazy bum when orbiting around the Earth in the sense that it always faces us with the same side. The Earth around the sun, not that much. And if we talk about proportions, then the sun to the Earth is proportionally very different than the Earth to the moon. Same thing with distance. If you look at how big the sun is to how far it is away from the Earth, and then you look how big the Earth is in comparison to the moon and how far they are apart, that is also very, very different. I don't know where you see any similarities, but you clearly don't see them in reality. So I'm sorry, you're wrong.
Another statement the Quran says. The Quran says, and verily we created every single thing from water.
Okay, the two verses I found about this are Surah 21 verse 30. Have those who believed not considered that the heavens and the earth were a joint entity, and we separated them and made from water every living thing? Then will they not believe? And the second one is Surah 24 verse 45. Allah has created every living creature from water, and of them are those that move on their bellies, and of them are those that walk on two legs, and of them are those that walk on four. Allah created what He wills. Indeed, Allah is over all things competent. So if you have it from the first verse, how come that the water part remains, but not the part where the heaven and the earth were joined together? Could it be because the water above the firmament theory got disproven? And in the second verse, that evolution, man, that evolution. Fish, then snakes, then frogs. Actually, no. First, humans and ostriches, because they walk on two legs. And then, back to frogs and lizards, who also came at the same time as donkeys, because after all, they have all 4 legs. And then, at the very end, the pinnacle of his creation, the millipede. I agree, that's scientifically super accurate, and I will never ever question your Quran ever again.
Now science, biology, has established clearly that every living element of existence has come from water.
What do you mean with living element of existence? What element lives? Can you go through the periodic table and point it out to me, please?
Part of what's inside water is called what?
Well, you know, there's a lot of shit inside water there, Khalid. Neutrons, electrons, protons. Well, unless you want to go smaller than that, then it's, subatomic particles and shit, quarks. You can also go a step above that and say that 2 hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom can be covalently bonded together to produce a water molecule. Those molecules can then be bonded together through hydrogen bonds when water molecule is polarized. So in actuality, you have multiple levels in which you can actually address this answer.
Part of what's inside water is called what? Carbon, isn't it?
Fuck no, it's not carbon. Where in the world did you get your basic understanding of chemistry? There is no carbon in water. Water is H2O. So I don't even know where this whole carbon nonsense comes into play.
Isn't it? Carbon. The Quran says, and we created every living thing from water.
Yes, we are very dependent on water. But that's because we evolved out of sea-dwelling creatures. So scientifically, that makes a lot of sense.
Now we know that all the gases that we find in the universe and inside the human beings, inside fossils inside the earth, so from the inside the earth to what's on the earth to what's outside of the earth is dependent upon and made from water.
The entire universe is not made of water, and the whole universe is not dependent on water either. And water does not hold all the gases. Just think about helium. You have to put in a bit more effort than just shoving it into water in order for it to not fly away. And you don't need water to hold all the gases either. There are enough other possibilities to hold other gases. In other words, what you're saying is complete nonsense. What a surprise.
The Quran said that. Could the Prophet have known that?
That water was necessary. But if he didn't, and he would have guessed it, that wouldn't make it a miracle either. If I say today that some stars are made out of glow-in-the-dark paint, and tomorrow we find out that there are stars who are solely made of the chemical that makes paint glow in the dark, I would be right without knowing, and yet I would clearly not be divinely inspired. I just had luck.
No. The Quran says, وَخَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ, and we created the human being from a hanging clot. And alaq means not suspended, but clinging and hanging.
No, a clot doesn't mean that. A clot means a thick mass of coagulated liquid, something like blood or material that sticks together. And I'm just guessing here that you're talking about Surah 23 verse 14, because you don't give any sources. And Surah 23 verse 14 reads as follows. Then we made the sperm drop into a clinging clot, and we made the clot into a lump of flesh, and we made from the lump bones, and we covered the bones with flesh, and then we developed him into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. So you're a drop, then a lump with bones, and then a lump with lump on top and bones in the middle, and then you're a human. This is so scientifically accurate, how could we ever question it? And if you think that this is not scientifically enough, then I highly recommend the 2 verses that come before it. Surah 23, verse 12 and 13. And certainly did we create man from an extract of clay. Then we placed him as a sperm drop in a firm lodging. In other words, he makes sperm out of clay and then shoves the sperm into something firm. Like, balls. Okay, so in these few minutes of your speech, you didn't cite one single verse of the Quran, one single source that I could check, and make me come through half of the bloody Quran, and then you stated that everything in the universe is made of water, and that water contains carbon. You have no clue what you're talking about. Okay, guys, give me just one moment, please. I need to fix my head.
Iseth, are you okay?
That's better.
Now the embryologist will tell us clearly now that when the sperm penetrates the egg then embeds itself into what? The uterus. And from embedding itself in the uterus, it creates what? A cluster, a clot, then it hangs. From there...
No embryologist would say that the amniotic sac just sort of hangs there loosely inside the mother. It's just a ridiculously childish way to view gestation. Are we sure this guy's 5-year-old son didn't write this speech?
The creation of the human being starts, and that hanging, that string that hangs becomes what for the human being? The umbilical cord, isn't it? That connects it to the brain, and that the brain is the first part of the human being that is fashioned, isn't it?
No, the umbilical cord does not connect directly to the brain. I mean, it connects where your belly button is there, buddy. Does he think that human gestation mimics the Matrix in some way? Like, the umbilical cord creates some kind of connection with our brain so that the fetus can, drink coffee and do Pilates, all the while getting woke as fuck.
So the Quran said, وَخَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ. Then the Quran goes on further to teach the 7 stages of the embryo in the womb until it comes fully out.
I haven't really been able to find anything about these 7 distinct stages of human gestation. We all know trimesters, so it's broken up by 3 for practical purposes. But even these stages are completely made up. The development of a fetus within a womb is gradual. So saying that it had 7 distinct phases is just the same as saying that, you had 51 different stages. It literally doesn't matter to the development of a fetus. I was able to find one scientific journal entry that tries to connect the Quran to the 3 existing stages that we have now in human gestation. I don't know where he's pulling the 7 stages from. But considering that this guy thinks that the umbilical cord is a literal string that connects the fetal brain to the host mother's brain, I would bet that he's full of shit here.
Could the prophet have known that? He could not have.
Even if they had broken up the different trimesters or whatnot for gestation in their society, it doesn't mean that Allah gave him that information. We were having babies way before the Quran was written, and we're going to continue to have babies long after the Quran ceases to be taken literally.
But the Quran has stated that clearly. Did he have a stethoscope? Did he have a way to look up inside? Could he have known that? No, he didn't know that.
Well, hold on right here. Did he literally just say a stethoscope is used to look up inside the womb and see the baby? I seriously hope that nobody ever takes you as a gynecologist, because that's not a gynecologist. Women were having babies long before the stethoscope was invented, regardless of how this guy thinks a stethoscope works. But he might also be pointing to a sonogram here, which actually does allow you to view kind of what it looks like in the womb. But I mean, those came much later than stethoscopes. I mean, stethoscopes, you can hear the baby's movement, the heartbeat, and all that kind of stuff.
The Quran also says in the Surah Rahman that Allah, the Creator, has created the oceans, large bodies of water, one sweet, palatable to the taste, and the other salty and bitter.
Fresh water does not have a sweet taste to it. Now, distilled water doesn't have a taste at all. Fresh water that we normally get from wells and other sources usually have minerals mixed in, which slightly affect the taste of water. I mean, I know that particular taste, especially when it's ice cold, is very refreshing and makes you feel really good, but I wouldn't call it sweet tasting. That's called sugar water. Salt water is still considered bitter, so I mean, you got that part right, but I mean, salt is a key ingredient to our diet. I mean, if we didn't have salt, we wouldn't be able to regulate blood pressure and shit like that. All in moderation, though.
What are those two bodies of water? Oceans and rivers, isn't it? And between them, he has put what is called barzakh, a barrier which they do not cross. What does that mean?
Hold on, this is actually not true. The reasons why the oceans are salty is because of the mixing of fresh and salt water. The ocean water evaporates up into the air, and then those storm clouds are carried over land, which then rains down on the ground, allowing salt that's on the ground to mix with it and carry it back to the ocean. See, it's this whole, water cycle thing that, your 5-year-old probably hasn't encountered in science class yet. The oceans are as salty as they are now because the Earth has had billions of years to get that equilibrium just right. Rivers do mix with ocean water in estuaries. The density difference between the ocean water and the fresh water causes the fresh water to flow over the ocean water. But they do eventually end up mixing.
It means that when the oceans meet the rivers, the ocean does not overcome the river, and the rivers do not enter the ocean so that the oceans absorb the rivers. It doesn't happen. Where oceans and rivers meet, does the ocean take over the river? It doesn't.
This is simply false. Like I said before, the rivers and oceans do eventually mix. And these mysterious lines where they meet depend on the density of water. If they are of the same color or close to it, you wouldn't even know a difference.
Although the ocean might be 5 times, 6 times, 8 times, 10 times larger than a river. And if you took 2 bodies of water and you put a funnel in between them, what would happen?
Funnel between the two? I don't know. I guess the funnel would float the fuck away, because you're just putting a fucking funnel in the middle of water. But to answer the question that you're actually asking, the 2 waters would definitely mix.
The larger body would absorb the smaller body, wouldn't they? But in the case of the ocean and the river, it doesn't happen because Allah said he put a barzakh. So they do not overcome each other.
No, he didn't, because they eventually mix. The Quran, once again, is wrong.
And one of our, Jacques Cousteau, who passed away now, he was a marine biologist. He was able to film under the ocean where the rivers meet the ocean, and the river meets the ocean, and the ocean meets the river, and they go back. They meet and they go back. So therefore the rivers return back to itself and the ocean returns back to itself, and they do not overcome each other. How did the prophet know that?
Well, considering that you can see it with your own eyes, my guess is the prophet just sort of looked at the motherfucker and was like, oh, that's how it works, without any scientific study done to it.
We could name many phenomena in the Quran that the Quran has stated 1,424 years ago as a miracle. Not that the Quran is a book of science. It is not.
Whew. I am glad you know this. I mean, for a second there, I thought you were arguing that the Quran has scientific value. I am, however, very confused as to why you're bringing up the Quran with respect to scientific principles if you're admitting that the Quran doesn't have any scientific value.
It is a book proving that Muhammad is a prophet of God because God has said things in it that Muhammad could not have known to prove who he was.
Well then, Allah got some shit wrong in his biography. Kind of odd for something that should literally know how everything works, right? Thanks for joining us today, Heath!
Yeah, outro. Ladies and gentlemen, blah blah. May your cold hearts ever beat, and don't forget to like and hug me and subscribe, and bye! So, now, where is my cookie? I did the thing, now give cookie.
Okay, but I mean, I didn't get to tell anybody where to go, who to subscribe to. I didn't do my stand-up, use your voice thing.
I don't care. Besides, they're our subscribers, not some random dogmatic weirdo who don't know how to click subscribe buttons or Patreon links. They figured it out perfectly fine themselves. So, now, where's my cookie?
Oh, I mean...
No!
Sorry.
The cookie's alive?